All right, so let me ask you this. You said it's got to be somebody real young or it's got to be a ceiling raiser. The other name that the insiders have mentioned is Desmond Ridder being on the trade block from the Falcons. They're reportedly in the mix for Justin Fields. I think it's like if the Steelers end up with Desmond Ridder and Justin Fields goes to the Falcons, what went wrong? How did that happen? Like who sat in a meeting and said, I don't think we should go get Justin Fields. But you want to know who we should trade for? Desmond Ridder. That's the guy that we should go get. That's a whole other story. That's a whole other topic of conversation. Desmond Ridder on the trade block, possibly, obviously linked to Arthur Smith and the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though he was back and forth, benched, not benched. You got to remember there is a three-game stretch Daniel Flick mentioned to us where he was second best quarterback in football behind the one and only Super Bowl champion Patrick Mahomes. I mean, as you hear that name, what are your thoughts when you hear the name? I don't even have a question. What are your thoughts when you hear Desmond Ridder, Pittsburgh Steelers?
Just kind of why are we thinking so small? Like, why are we only looking at quarterbacks that Arthur Smith has worked with before, you know? Like, I get it. Like, these are just rumor, like, these are reports, you know, who knows how serious the interest is and everything. But, like, if these are our big names, you know, Ryan Tannehill and Desmond Ridder, I don't understand that because there are other quarterbacks out there. There are guys who haven't worked with Arthur Smith before. There are guys who have had results in other systems, and it just feels like small thinking, you know. It feels like we're just not aiming very high at all. If we're looking at Desmond Ridder as, and I just don't know what Desmond Ridder is, you know. Like, there's no, like, and this is kind of the same conversation as Tannehill, but like, is he a starter in the NFL? Like, do you really think that he is a starter in the NFL? And if he is a starter, is he raising the ceiling for the Steelers at all? That's what I feel like this offseason has to be about. Is not like this team is good enough. We're not just looking for competitive, though. We're not looking for good enough. We're looking to take that next step. We're looking for another leap, and I don't see how either Desmond Ridder or Ryan Tannehill help you take a leap at all.
No, there's just no. How do you go from what? Where is the thought process? What is the train of thought to go? You want to know who isn't good enough to just guarantee himself a starting spot on this roster? The number one quarterback in the draft class 2-3 years ago. You want to know who might be good enough to become the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers? The number 4 or 5 quarterback in the draft class 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like, I just don't. I can't wrap my brain around how they consider. Art Rooney sat in front of me, and my brain is going a million miles an hour because this is just bonkers to me. Art Rooney sat in a table where I sat as well, and the first thing out of this guy's mouth was the quote-unquote next step for the Pittsburgh Steelers is quote-unquote quality quarterback play, that they need to go get quality quarterback play, and that has to be their top priority this offseason, and that they have to figure out the quarterback situation. And then when he talked about Kenny Pickett, all he could describe is the good things are the intangibles, the bad things are the tangibles. The bad things are the how you play quarterback, the good things are the how you talk about leading a team as a quarterback, which, cool, maybe you can teach those things. But to set your bar as we need to go find another quarterback, we have to go find quality play because we saw what we can get out of these things. And then to say, all right, well, that bar is possibly 34-year-old Ryan Tannehill, who is no longer a starter in the NFL, and Desmond Ridder, who may have never been starter capable in the NFL, to come in here and compete with Kenny Pickett, who at the end of the season was not starter capable because of Mason Rudolph. It's just, I like their first approach. Like, I like their go get Mason Rudolph. He's our top option. I have no issues with that. You know, if that's a guy that you guys feel confident in, and if the Pittsburgh Steelers see as this guy has more left in the tank that we think we could get out of him, awesome. If that does not work out and you have nothing behind him besides a bunch of guys that you clearly know are not going to beat out Kenny Pickett, or you look at and just say, well, maybe he could beat out Kenny Pickett, but I don't know how high that ceiling is. It just doesn't make any sense to me to just, it's almost as if they're giving up. You know, like it's like, all right, Mason didn't work out. What's the easiest options? You know, how can we just get somebody like you might as well go get Malik Willis and just say, hey, maybe he's gonna work out too. You know, who cares?
Right, just rebuild the entire 2017, 2018 Titans. What year was
No,
was
he wouldn't. He was the Malik was the he wouldn't have been there that year. He would have been. He's in Kenny's draft class.
Oh, right. He was
So
much
what's
later.
that?
Yeah,
2020, 2021?
2022, I think, was technically the draft. Yeah.
So he's sitting there like you might as well just go get every quarterback that you had interest in and say, well, you know, one of these guys is going to work out. You know, who it is, who knows, but we'll figure it out.
Right. And it didn't seem like they have a guy, you know, and you felt like, I don't know, they don't know what they really want out of this quarterback position, quite honestly. Like, I think they want Kenny to work out, but I don't think they know what they're playing. Like you said, they seem to have a backup plan. Like, they don't seem to know what they would do if Kenny doesn't work out, which is a little concerning. And it's just, there are only going to be fewer and fewer quarterbacks available. There are only going to be fewer and fewer options as time goes on. And I just worry about what kind of direction what plan they have and what direction because it, like I said, it just doesn't seem like they even really know what kind of player they're looking for.
No, it feels like they're putting in their list of priorities, making sure Kenny Pickett works out seems to be above being a Super Bowl contender. And that's not going to work out in the long run, because if it works out and Kenny Pickett's the guy, cool. Then everybody looks like an idiot and you look like geniuses. Cool. Sounds good. If it doesn't, you're sitting right back to where you were, possibly in a worse spot because you don't have a quality backup instead of somehow finding what Mason Rudolph was at the end of the season. And I think Kenny Pickett wins games. Like, I think Kenny Pickett leads you to a winning record. Like, I think that's what Kenny Pickett brings, and I think that's what the Steelers are capable of getting out of him. But it shouldn't be like if that's not your bar, you know. And I think that's where people were hoping it changed this offseason, and it's not. And if they switch those two, if they said, well, we want to win a Super Bowl and priority 2 is making sure Kenny Pickett works out, you'd bring in tougher competition and you just hope for the best, and you wouldn't be worried about taking a risk that maybe lowers the chances of Kenny Pickett being that guy. And I think that's where things go awry, and that's what's going to lower the whole expectation of the season is where they are right now.
Right. And like, this is a team that has made the playoffs for 2 of the last 3 years, right? But they've just barely snuck. Like, you need to aim higher at some point. Like, at some point, it's got to be. And these are like tough calls. Like, this is where roster building gets really hard. Like, I think building a team into something that can be really competitive and like a playoff contender is one thing, but getting them over that hump and getting them progressively up each next level, that's where it gets real. I mean, look at the 49ers. Like, the 49ers have built what looks like on paper like a nearly perfect roster. Like, I don't know where the holes on the 49er roster is, and they still, lose in the Super Bowl, like every time they make it there. It's hard to do this stuff, but you have to make hard decisions in order to get to those points and put yourself over the hump.
Exactly. And the Steelers we say it all the time. Like, if the Steelers had this quarterback, think about how much farther they would have been this year. Like, they're a team that on paper have a lot of really, really, really good players, and they have some holes obviously, but they should be much better than where they stand and where they finish year after year. And that's just where they are. If you had to guess before we head out of here, if you had to guess right now, currently, and we're going to ask this question a dozen times throughout the offseason, but it's the day after the Super Bowl. It's a good time to ask it. Your prediction right now, if you had to guess, who's the Steelers starting quarterback in week 1 of the 2024 season?
Kenny Pickett. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I would say it's Kenny Pickett. Who's their backup? Who's your prediction if it was their backup?
It's a good question. That is a really good question. I'll have to update myself on honestly, I think they're going to end up drafting a quarterback, quite honestly, in the 3rd or 4th round. So I think whoever – I don't know who the 3rd and 4th round quarterbacks are this year, but someone in there.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think my prediction as a backup right now, starter's Kenny. I predict Kenny Pickett. Backup, I think I'm going to go Ryan Tannehill. And yeah, I know a lot of people are going to shake their heads at that too. Yeah, I don't feel super hot about it, but that's my prediction. The day after the Super Bowl, Shout out Chris Oldokun, man. I hope he's doing well in Kansas City. Shout out Isaiah Bugs. I hope he's doing well in Kansas City.